As many of you know, Womanifesto has been a journey, and it's taken a while for me to get to a point of making it come to life. And it's really been a beautiful journey that I've thoroughly enjoyed. Womanifesto is more than just being a woman in industry. It really is about engaging the different roles and responsibilities that we have as women, even outside the dictated gender norms within society. I really believe that how I choose to embrace life, to engage with life professionally as a parent, and the choices I make should be something that I consistently decide for myself. So we really should be able to choose as we grow and as we learn. The first few episodes touched on this. I speak to women who are using their professional agency to really mentor and teach other women. And they share their stories and insights of their day-to-day and the work that they are doing on platforms like Womanifesto. Sharing of knowledge is something I've always valued, and reflecting on Womanifesto in the last few weeks since August, I'm really excited about where Womanifesto will go, and not only because of what I will be able to share with you, but because of what we can share collectively. In the second episode, I talk about finding my gift and how really that process involved community, where I was engaging and sharing this process with the people around me. And for me, that is what Womanifesto really is. Fear was one of the things that had stopped me from actioning Womanifesto as a passion project, really. And the more I engage with women and the more I share my story, one of the things I'm realizing is that it is a wonderful thing that I have worked through that fear and that I am doing this. It's been a really fulfilling and engaging experience for me. It is important that we overcome our fears, and I'm glad that I did, because I believe that if I overcome my fear, perhaps I can help someone else overcome their fear. I believe that it is important for us to equip ourselves with knowledge and to create community that creates this knowledge. We can share it as women in a powerful way that helps us reshape the future we need, especially as Africans. As women, this allows us to question problematic norms with more insight and more confidence. When we do this collectively, it creates a shift, not only in thinking, but also in action. The final episode in August unpacks the importance of equal access and connectivity in the way we learn and live. The platforms where we can learn and question how and what we learn are important, and not only because of influencing us, but because they influence so much more. They can influence policy, infrastructure, service, and also product design, and how all women, and yes, all women, should have access to these so that they can meet their needs. think the jury is still out in terms of how much deeper I will dig as a person for the purposes of what I'm trying to do. What I do understand intellectually is that stories are important and they are powerful. And my thing had always been that stories have to be told holistically as well. And part of sharing who I am is exactly that, is that I'm not one thing. I'm not just an engineer. And therefore, when I go out, I share a story of my supposed stellar career. And then there isn't a balance of what that takes. I think that's what trips us up most of the time, is that you do get to a point where you're romanticizing things. And one of the things I found I had romanticized in life is entrepreneurship, which is the journey that I will get into now with the coming episodes of Womanifesto, where I just want to talk to entrepreneurs who are trying to do this thing and make it work. There's a romanticism, and part of that is how we tell stories, and it's how truthful we are in telling the stories. It's the fact that we take away elements that are what matters and we hide those away. And then things that people are able to achieve then still remain far. Because if I don't see your cracks and your struggles and your issues, it's always then that it's you were lucky or special. So I can always use you as an excuse not to do what I intend to do. And the courage to be able to dig that deep, which was very hard and it's very difficult. And I do get teary. The whole point of Womanifesto is that as a collective, if we learn together, if we share these stories, then maybe we can impact. First off, I didn't think doing the podcast would be the hard work that it is, because remember, supposedly this is my gift. This is the thing I do. I communicate, and that's what I had figured out from the self-discovery process. It's hard work. My hope is to also stop romanticizing going after what you really desire and what you want. That just because you want it and you desire it doesn't exclude the hard work and the difficulty and the need for skill, which comes from practice and consistency that comes with it, right? And for me, this podcast has been that. It's remembering that just because you want it, it doesn't make it easy. Producing content is not a joke. And I have a full appreciation of that now, and also just respect for other types of skill sets and other arts, where as an engineer, everything that's hard work results in something being built and something that you see and you can visualize, right? There is nothing for me to hold on to after recording an episode. Like, there's nothing to go see and look at, and it's just words. And for me, it's that dilemma and inner conflict of, is this really impactful? What did I do with this episode? What did I achieve? How I met Rihanna was through a project that I was working on. I have not met her in person because our introduction was actually now during COVID-19. And so I got introduced to her by a friend of mine that I am working with on another project. And he listened to what I'm hoping to do with Womanifesto. I think it was after we did episode 2. the one that talks about the type of stories I want to talk about with the story of the archer. He listened to that and he was like, I know a person who would have a beautiful story to share. And that's how I met her. And then we connected, talked about her project, and I found it quite interesting. And for me, that's the point. It's stories like that where if we're not glamorizing everything, what it boils down to is women helping other women, or people helping other people, and people sharing love and a sense of community and responsibility to make everybody else's lives around them better. She's really an awesome story because of what they get to do. And it touched on other elements, which is a big thing that we have to think about as humanity, as like climate change is what it is and all of that. Her story for me touched on so many things, like the reuse of the saris, the cultures coming together, helping other people, following your own dream, and also getting to a point where she was like, this is enough. I've owned a boutique. I've done it all. This is great, which I think should happen with everyone, where what starts being important is the legacy you're going to leave behind. And hers is a journey of legacy where she decided that actually I've done enough of the fancy stuff, the boutique at whatever mall and whatever. How can I actually really impact lives? So I love her story. It's really one that warms my heart. I would find a conversation with someone like Bronwyn quite interesting, because then you understand things that, I mean, on your day-to-day basis, who's thinking about what's happening in the world? I'm not. With everything else we have to do, I'm not. I love things like that, and they excite me. They excite me even in just reading them, in thinking about it. Because for me, it's like if you could work out things conceptually, chances are you could work towards them at some point, right? Which, that's how things start. They are just concepts until they are done. The podcast was a concept until it was done. And how the podcast came to being, it's because actually there was a trend of podcasts taking over, being the new radio on demand, whatever the case might be. So it's an actual trend that when we were analyzing it 4 years ago, it was like, actually, if there's one way of expressing this gift, podcast could be one of them. And it's having the knowledge of that trend that helped with that. Part of what I had to do with myself, like the conversations I've had to have with myself, is to let go of the outcome, which is also scary, because you really don't know if what you're saying is going to resonate with anyone. And sometimes you don't even get the feedback. Reflections should be more concerned with what you think about yourself when you look at yourself. The input of what others think, I think, gives you feedback, and you can then decide whether this is a reflection you want to give off or it's not, and change that according to how you need to change it or want to change it. But I wouldn't really be worried about what people are seeing when you reflect, because ultimately the mirror is facing you. It's you and the mirror. And for me, Womanifesto is exactly that. It's what's your Womanifesto? What are you about? And that's why even on the episode, the last one now on fatigue, is that fundamentally what exhausts us is the element of not knowing who we are and what we want. And that run around in your head and in not figuring yourself out is part of the exhaustion. And what I hope reflection does, or my obsession with reflection is that when you reflect, you get an opportunity to ask yourself the questions that matter. Not the questions that matter for somebody else, but for you, which are, what do you want? What do you value? What are you going to do about it? How do you know if you are being your authentic self? And how do you feel when you look at yourself in the mirror? One of the questions I asked myself is, with everything I'm going to say, how true is all of this for me? And that was the most important part, to say, misunderstood or not, this was my lived experience. Whether the person listening to it receives it, it resonates, they take it, they don't take it, it changes their lives, it doesn't. Ultimately, that's the reflection I've looked at, and that's what I faced. And that's the story that reflected back at me in that moment. And I hope, really sincerely, and at the end of the episode, I did say, I hope this story helps you to find your way back to yourself. And I did mean it. That I really hope that even if it's one human being, when they listen to that story, they find something to hold on to, and tools and ways of processing things and thinking about things that can help them step out of that fatigue or that circle that's just not ending.